I'm so excited to be talking here with these talented creatives who are here to share insights that bring all these amazing stories to life. You know, a lot of fan favorites here involved. Fans are a huge part of what we do. So I'll kind of open this up to anybody who wants to jump in first. As professionals working in the entertainment industry, you've had the opportunity to contribute to popular projects that have garnered a dedicated fan base. How does fan culture and enthusiasm of fans impact your work in creating all these projects?
For me, I'm in kind of an interesting position because I've worked on a lot of fan favorites that are remakes or reboots of shows. So obviously fans are really interested in these projects succeeding and they don't want their childhoods to be ruined. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, multiple iterations of that, Transformers, Thundercats, Rugrats, etc. So for us, we always have the fans in mind because we are actually fans ourselves. So we kind of approach it from a fan perspective, knowing that we would not want to be disappointed in what we put out, and we want to really put the love into the different projects that we work on. So that's basically the jumping off point for all the creativity. And then after that, we hope that we not only surprise a few people, but we make something new and enduring for the next generation too.
Awesome. Anybody else?
So I've been a lifelong Batman fan ever since Michael Keaton graced the screen as Batman. Woo! So going into Gotham Knights was bringing myself as a fan into the experience for designing the costumes, and much like you said, being a fan myself, I knew how much it would mean to all of the other fans to, one, get it right, to pay homage in fun, little, different Easter eggy kind of ways, but also just make it something that we all appreciate. So the nerd heart and love was there, and my whole entire crew are also nerds, so that really helped the process.
And I was just going to offer a slightly different perspective, because I don't think I've done any remakes yet. So going into every project, anything could become a fan favorite, could become a cult classic. So I kind of go into everything with the same mindset, you know, give it your all and just hope that it resonates well with the fans and we get more seasons from it. So, yeah.
And I would say welcome to the Fans Anonymous panel. Yeah, basically the minute sitting there in Star Wars and the big ship went over my head in the theater. Yes, I was 15, I think, when that happened. I was hooked, and I grew up in the Missouri Ozarks and said I'm going to work on Star Wars someday, and I did. So I tell people out there, if you have a goal, if you have a desire to do something, put your mind to it, and you can do it.
I would offer for Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai, if you're a fan of Jerry Goldsmith. This was not at all an intimidating project, but it was a great way to. Jeff, are you Jeff down there?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Sorry.
We just met.
We just met. Yes. I'm a huge fan of your work, though. Of everyone here, by the way. But I was going to say to tack on to what you were saying, that it's kind of an honor to continue the story and to pay homage to to what we all kind of grew up on and what we're fans of.
Yeah, similar thing here, working on a video game adaptation like Twisted Metal. You know, there's a huge amount of responsibility to the original creators of those video games who put a whole bunch of love and work into making the sound for those video games and giving you the experience that you guys enjoy playing those video games. So, like Jennifer said, paying homage and, really doing the fans, service.
Awesome. And has there ever been a project, for example, that you were aware of, but maybe you weren't a fan that grew to become a fan of?
Yeah, I didn't work on it, but Last of Us was something that completely wasn't on my radar. I obviously had friends who played it and I'd seen gameplay, but when I saw the show, I was immediately went back onto YouTube and started watching more gameplay and missed that,
Yeah. And with that, Marshall, let's talk a little bit more about VFX. So, it's your role to make decisions. Visions come alive through technology. We see a lot of that in shows like Yellowjackets that explore themes of cannibalism. Can you elaborate on the challenges of?
Yeah, well, we found that the artists, we got the best response and best work from them before lunch. After lunch, they were just a little slower. So, but for us, in this particular sequence that we were dealing with, the special effects makeup supervisor, Todd Masters, and the special effects coordinator, Lori Sandus, had made the model there. And they had put a lot of time and effort in it to get it look tasty, I guess would be the right word, appetizing, juice, something like that. So when they got it on film and they got it into doing the digital intermediate, it wasn't quite popping enough for them. So we just basically did the augmentation of that. We went out to find references of things that were succulent. We started out with a turkey when it comes out of the oven. Yeah, can't resist that. But we ended up with a roasted pig. Spit roasted pig skin is what actually had the best look to it. And that's what the showrunners decided to go with, that type of look. So we just kind of kissed that in. I say we just kind of put the little special sauce on that, so to speak. But but like I said, the special effects texture location, I guess there's an interview out there you can read, I think, on /film where they talked more in depth about that. But they had different versions of Jackie. It was burn log Jackie, and then they had jackfruit Jackie. So.
Is any of that stuff consumed after you're done shooting, or?
Yeah, well, I wasn't on set. That was being handled, the on-set stuff, by Ken O'Connor, who was the studio side visual effects supervisor on that. But my understanding,
no rat party buffets or anything.
No, yeah, I don't know if they might have served jackfruit because they found out jackfruit had the right consistency and texture after it was cooked, that it looked close enough to. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
So Sherri, as a composer for projects like Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai, how do you approach creating a musical score for an animated series that's based on such like a beloved franchise?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the creator Zi Chun was really amazing, and he really wanted to like we keep saying this turn of phrase, pay homage to something, and I think you kind of have to. But he really wanted to do his own thing. A lot of it was he wanted to be very thematic, kind of stick in with like the Amblin way, where you're putting kids in like these really grown-up adult situations, and you're really leaning into the emotion, and the horror, and the adventure. And these themes and ideas of doing the right thing and guilt and family and that kind of thing. So I feel like musically, I'm really inspired by the things that I see in the stories that are being told. So the writing is fantastic, the acting is really great, and once I saw like the coloring of everything and something beyond the animatics that were just without color and moving storyboards, it's kind of like it all comes together. And I think I did some research. You kind of tap into that kind of style of music, animation that's going to have this sort of muscular orchestral feel to it, and you kind of just dive in, and you realize you're the one in the driver's seat. So in the same way that I was inspired by so many Goldsmith scores growing up, I just kind of do my best to pass that on as well to fans.
Awesome. And so maybe for people that don't know as much about the process, like what's the, is it a lot of back and forth? You mentioned seeing sort of like some early colors and imagery. Is it something that's, handed back and forth, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of animation starts out, it's all a different process, but some of it starts out with these moving storyboards called animatics. You're not really seeing all the color and everything like that. But yeah, it started out in script form. We had a lot of creative conversations about it. And then from there, you just kind of move back and forth. I sort of demo everything out and do it in my computer and sort of emulate the orchestra, or emulate what the music's going to sound like once it's recorded live. Then they listen to it and say, oh yeah, that's cool, let's lean more into this, let's pull back for that humor. Kind of have those creative shaping conversations, and then it goes back and forth from there, and then goes to an orchestra.
Awesome. So Jeff, let's continue with this animation talk. I know you've worked on several animated projects. Transformers, Earthspark was mentioned. How do you handle all the sound mixing requirements for those like really intense action sequences?
It is really intense. It's a big show, and so what we'll do is you're basically facing down this like epic build of all these sound effects and environments that our company puts together, and then you've got this great score. This team, Crush Effect, does the score, and so the biggest challenge obviously is like balancing all of that and then making sure the dialogue comes through so everyone has any idea of what's going on. So there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into that and sort of working that out. But for me, the way I kind of make sense of it and get through the day is I just focus on story. So I start with one scene at a time, and I'm like, what is the important story beat here? What is the audience going to connect with in this moment? And that might mean featuring some bit of sound design that's going to maybe put you in the world with the characters, or maybe I'm going to ramp the score at a certain moment to really push an emotional beat. But if we're really focusing on story as we're going through, then that intimidating process of it being such a big, huge build kind of all just falls into place around it.
Awesome. And one thing I often get asked as a director is like, when do you know you've got it? So like, what does that mean for you? Like, when do you, I can't imagine the number of layers, right? It's like, for you personally, like, when do you feel like we've got it?
Yeah, it's hundreds and hundreds of layers of effects for a show like that. I put myself in the mind of an audience member, and so when I get through my workday, before the clients would have a chance to see it, the producers, et cetera, to give their kind of notes, I just watch it down from that perspective. Like, I'm sitting down with my kids, we're watching this show. Is it exciting? Is it making me feel all the feels? And then if I get there, and I'm sure it's probably similar for James as well, like, then you've got it. Okay, I'm in a good place. And then, of course, they come in and put their spin on it on top as well.
Right. So yeah, it's very, it's very obvious that sound's a crucial element in capturing the essence of the scene. James, could you touch on the overall approach for designing the sounds for shows like Twisted Metal? And like, what are some of the techniques you use for such a unique experience?
Yeah, I think especially for Twisted Metal, the very first thing we did was reach out to Sony PlayStation, try to get all the original sound files from those video games, which they were gracious enough to give to us. And we had early spotting sessions with our wonderful showrunner, Michael Jonathan Smith, who you might know from Cobra Kai, who was adamant about like making the car combat and the missile explosions and the gunfire just as gnarly as possible. So we went back to the studio and we thought about how we could amplify everything. We were listening to those original recordings from Sony, and the problem was that those games go back as far as 17 years. So some of the audio files, are low bit MP3 stuff that had to be squeezed onto those PlayStation discs, those 5th gen consoles. So basically it was like listening to those, replicating it and enhancing it to try and pay as much authenticity to the original sound of the video games as possible. It was just, and then from that point it was like the vehicle sound design was like, how do we enhance all of the characters' cars? So we layered some of the cars with animal noises. So Anthony Mackie's character, John Doe, plays a milkman. He's running delivery routes, and we decided, he's got one of the more slick cars at the beginning of the series, so we decided to layer his car with big cat sounds. So anytime you hear his engine peel out, you hear a tiger roar underneath it. We also developed a turbo boost to try and enhance the linkage between his character and the car, because he puts a lot of love into his car and tries to keep it maintained. And the opposite was true with Sweet Tooth, where it was like his ice cream truck needed to sound just as gnarly as possible and like, greasy, oily, hot. So we just made it sound like this rust bucket. So it was about doing whatever we could with the sound to link the vehicles to the characters, and then enhancing the weapon design as much as possible. So
awesome. What's an example of a obscure sound you use that you're like pleasantly surprised it worked for what you wanted, that you just never would have thought? You already listed numerous ones, but for you, what's a favorite? Yeah, so some of you might have seen the full trailer online. So Agent Stone has this like missile launch, and we took he has this, when he arms the missile to fire it, it does this kind of wind-up sound, and we took a police siren and took the individual like blips of tone, and we made it pitch upwards to make it sound like the missile was like powering up to fire, to try and like tie it in with his like law personality, which kind of worked out really well. It was cool. It kind of cut through the mix, Awesome. Yeah. So Jennifer, because we're at Comic-Con, of course, we're going to talk about superheroes. So you've worked on projects like Gotham Knights, the series that saw the introduction of the first ever female Talon. I'd love you to share some insight on, kind of how you developed that character.
Okay. So first of all, I love a pun, so I lovingly named her the Femme Fatale. And that's just what we called her in my department. So she came along as well as many other Talons towards the end of our season, and we'd already made one Talon for the majority of our season, and then we had all of these other ones. And when James and Chad, our showrunners, came to me saying, "Jen, we're gonna have a female Talon," I was like, what? This is awesome. This is so exciting, because I know what it meant for me as a woman, and then what it would mean for other women out there seeing a female Talon being so badass. Ooh, there, I did it. Being so bad and ruthless and just kicking bum and all of that. It was so exciting. And what we did for designing her and the other talents is, in talking with James and Chad, it was taking elements from the comic books, the Court of Owls run, as well as what we liked of the talent in the video game. And then also, we were able to incorporate some of the options that I had for the first talent that we couldn't use. It wasn't right for the first talent, but it actually worked for this set of talons. We were able to incorporate a lot of that. And because the talons are over 100 years old, depending on when they were killed and then, imbibed with electrum, I incorporated elements from the last century through their costumes. So some of them have World War I elements to them, like the battle axe talon, and for Femme Fatale, she has all of these fun little throwing stars, and they're kind of like these carved up, instead of batarangs, talarangs, and all of these fun little blades where if for any one reason she loses one blade, she has like 10 others that she can choose from to be extra lethal. And in the process of designing her, I texted James and Chad because I kind of got a little verklempt in the process, because I am not a person who likes to wear costumes. I'm the person who likes to design the costumes for other people to wear. But when I was designing her, I was like, gosh, I just want to wear this costume. The fan in me was like nerding out over my own stuff in a fun kind of way. And there was an intention behind her that I had for myself. And when Danielle, the stunt actress, came in for her first fitting, she spoke to it without me even saying one word. And she said, Jen, I feel so powerful in this costume. I don't feel sexualized like I have in other superhero costumes. I feel feminine and powerful, and this means so much to me. And that is exactly what I had designed her with intention for, and I was so happy in that moment. So
That's incredible. Very cool. Very cool. So Jamie, you're also bringing characters to life as a visual effects supervisor. Can you describe the process of enhancing characteristics through VFX in I'm a Virgo, and then maybe kind of where that collaboration fits in with other people on the production?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm a Virgo sort of represents the anti-superhero portion of the panel. And if you know Boots Riley, the writer-director of the show, likes to get a lot of his work in camera, if possible. So you'd think this would minimize the visual effects work required. But as he said himself in a tweet about a week ago, this almost tripled the work for the on-set visual effects teams, because an awful lot of planning goes into getting it right in camera. So we can sort of previs things and do all the math to figure everything out. So if for anyone that doesn't know, I'm a Virgo, it's got one very large character and some normal characters, some small characters, all sorts going on. And all of that needs to be mathed out and figured out so that you can get it in camera, so that Jor-El Jerome, who plays Cootie, isn't 13 feet tall. Sorry for spoilers. In order to get him to look big in camera, you need to scale him to the camera. So there's all this sort of camera trickery that does go into creating a show like this. But then we did take those characters in post-production as well and create digital versions of them so that they could do things that they couldn't do on set. It's a little easier for us because we can just make any character and scale them up and down as much as we like. But the on-set teams had to, it doubled all of their work as well, because everything needed to be created twice. Once in small scale, so that if Jor-El's walking around, he looks big inside of it. And then again at large scale, so that anyone else in that space feels small. So for something that seems simple, you just scale people up, scale people down. It created an awful lot of work for both the on-set teams and the visual effects teams. Yeah.
What are some things that inspire you guys that come maybe from different departments or from like creative leads, or even just maybe even obscurely where you're obviously different for all of you guys, but you might be walking down a hall and hear a sound. Like what's something that like sparks your inspiration?
It's actually a really good example. I'm constantly getting my iPhone out when I hear weird sounds. There was a baby at an airport once that made the strangest sounds I've ever heard before, and I followed it around with my phone. My wife was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Shh, we just got to get some. I don't know what I'll do with it, but this is good stuff. Maybe it's a gremlin. I don't know what it'll be, But yeah, I think at least in the sound world, I'm sure you can attest to this too, James. Like we're always have our ears open for like interesting and unique soundscapes. So, and surprisingly, the iPhone takes pretty decent recordings. You can put that stuff on TV. So I do kind of get inspired by the real world all the time. Or if I'm, on a hiking trip, I just stop all the time. Dad's just recording. Go on, kids, keep walking, and I'll record a river or whatever's going on.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, in a not too dissimilar way, like, oftentimes when you're mixing and sound designing towards what we call an offline cut, which is kind of a cut without any VFX, you're working to pre-visualizations and you're kind of trying to, I don't know, gauge the scope of something or the size of something. And it can be a little bit nebulous and you're trying to figure out, how do I make this thing come to life? And then when you get that first cut with updated VFX, that can be really inspiring from a different department, like receiving the first cut and you're like, oh my God, you can see the level that it's jumped to. So it kind of forces you to bring your A game into the project and, it kind of like helps you level up and bring more life to it. And, that's super inspiring. Yeah.
And I can't imagine walking around here there's any inspiration.
Yeah, no, none whatsoever. I don't love people watching at Comic-Con. But no, I do actually really love seeing everyone's cosplay because while I might know the exact way something was made, it's always so interesting to me to see how you all reimagine it yourselves and make it. But for me, inspiration-wise, I get inspiration from everywhere. Nature, everything. I've used tree bark on costumes and acorns, and I'll see an element and know how to transform it in a very different way than nature intended it for, but that's just me. And with our show for Gotham Knights, the set deck especially helped inform all of the characters costume-wise, and luckily our set decorator, Jonna, and I were on the exact same page, but it was so wonderfully thrilling to walk through the sets once they were dressed and look at everything that went into a person's home or their office and get into the psychology of, okay, this is why they have this trinket and they gravitate towards these colors, and okay, they're more of a pencil person than a pen person, stuff like that.
I was going to say, and Jennifer, this is kind of to you, what gives me a lot of inspiration, I've done a lot of work on superhero shows like Batwoman, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, and it's like, the costuming is always something that is like super, super inspiring. Exactly what you were saying, it's always there because sorry, but like I don't see any of your VFX in those things. We have like stick figures.
That's a compliment.
Exactly. Yeah. So
We'll take it.
composers, we don't get any of those things to inspire us. We get sometimes blank cards that says, crash into the building, and we have to somehow hit that. So we don't have you yet. But the costuming is always there, and it's always super, super inspiring for my job.
Oh, I thought you meant when the project was finished, the visual effects was invisible. Like you couldn't see.
That's
why I thought it was a
took
compliment.
too,
I was
so-
like, oh, thank you.
good,
Thank you.
yeah.
It is, but it's actually an inspiration. And to your point, though, it's actually an inspiration after, because when I watch it on air, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. All right, the building did actually crash down when I hit that, so that's actually good. So yes, kudos to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I've been on both ends. So sometimes I'm on set, and there we have to figure out how we're going to do it, and you get a little worried. And then your other end, we get it in studio, then you're still worried because how are we going to make this work? But for myself, the inspiration for what things look like, if it's a realistic thing, is we do a lot of Google searches. So I just hope no one ever looks at my browser history. The stuff, especially, burnt flesh.
I'm definitely on list for that.
Yeah. So that's for inspiration, just day in, day out. I mean, as mentioned, I've got my iPhone with me. I take photos all day long. It trains your eyes. You'll see stuff that you don't believe. I mean, when I flew down from Canada to here, flying over the Rockies down the spine, I took some photos and posted it, and my friends were like, oh, yeah, that's a matte painting. It's like, nope, that was realism. And the thing is that sometimes, nature will surprise you and give you something that you would never have thought out. So just when you're out there, just keep your eyes open and look around for inspiration. Yeah.
Awesome. And then, so let's expand on that a little bit, for both for you, Marshall, and Jamie. What's the inspiration's a great jumping off point. After that, obviously, there's a lot of work to be done. What's like maybe give us sort of a barometer of something that might take very little to do, or something as big as a car crash? Like, is the bigger the production value we all see at home, does that always relate to just a lot of VFX, or is it sometimes something very simple?
It is a mix of stuff. I myself am a fan of getting as much in camera as we can. It makes my job easier in the end, and then we just do augmentation and take it forward from there. But there's just so much stuff. I had a particular scene on a movie, and I don't know if I can mention it or not, but basically, the camera flew all the way around the van and through the van and outside the van as it drove away. And people, when they saw that, they were like, oh, wait a minute, how did they just do that? So it's those moments where you catch people off guard that makes me happy, because it's like, not that I fooled them, but the idea is that I didn't pull them out of the film and help tell the story.
Right.
So, but.
Yeah, to kind of bounce off of that, it really could go either way. There are the big Transformers movies, and well, that's visual effects and that costs a lot. But then there are others, the invisible visual effects that we kind of touched on, that also cost a lot, but you sort of never know we did anything, hopefully. So I guess all visual effects.
Like you were saying, invisible earlier, like you want it to be, you don't want to reveal the magic trick.
Yes, yeah, indeed. There's a lot of visual effects in a lot of shows these days, and maybe more than you realize.
Yeah, a lot of that. I mean, that's it. I say on a lot of shows, if I did my job right, people would go, what did you do on that?
Yeah.
Right. That's great. So speaking of, car chases, obviously, it looks like there's going to be quite a few in Twisted Metal.
No.
Yeah, I hope. No, I'm excited to see that. But what would talk us through kind of like how you approach mixing those sequences, because they obviously look very complicated with everything going on.
Yeah, I think Jeff will second me on this, that, when you're presented with a complicated sequence like the opening, that scene of John driving through the mall, that's from episode 1, it's just complete chaos. There's like gunfire, explosions, car drifting, like debris flying. And I think oftentimes when you're presented with all the sound editorial and all the sound design that you've worked on, there's a temptation to kind of throw everything into the mix. And it oftentimes ends up, muddying the mix, and kind of you lose the story. And I know Jeff was talking about story earlier. So, oftentimes it's this balancing act of like finding out the story beats, as Jeff had mentioned, figuring out what to play and when, and then really aggressive fader moves. So like car swerves around the corner, that's full volume. We cut inside the car and we hear Anthony Mackie talking. You want to hear the dialogue and just a little bit of the, the car engine noises or the tires squealing as he drifts around the information, sign. And that's a perfect example actually in that sequence, like when he's drifting around that information board and there's gunfire and stuff, you're really only hearing 3 things, which is his dialogue, which is the most important thing, some of the ricochets hitting the information board, and then some of the tire squealing. And you really have to be selective about the sounds that you choose to play and when. Otherwise, everything can kind of get jumbled up. So in Twisted Metal, and there's a ton, that was just a small fraction of the entire series. But, every single episode has this huge car chase or big, intricate, like action sequence. And a lot of the time,
a lot of metal gets twisted.
Yeah, a lot of it gets twisted. Yeah, a lot of metal gets twisted. But yeah, a lot of that was just like figuring out, like going through each sequence and being like, okay, this is what we need to hit at this time code. This is what we need to hit at this time code, and making those aggressive fader moves and making sure the music was doing its thing the whole time. And then, as many like burnouts and explosions and stuff that you can put into the mix, you got to do it.
So, Jennifer, and you kind of maybe hinted at a little bit earlier, but are there any kind of Easter eggs that you like to maybe finesse into any of the things you put together? Whether it's a fan Easter egg or something personal to you, because that's something I like to do as well. It's something that I can kind of wink to myself at.
There's a whole lot of it throughout Gotham Knights. 2 of my favorite Easter eggs. One of the fans actually cosplayed and is wearing today. Where a lot of the Easter eggs that I love the most are in Duella's costumes, because she's just so fun that you can't help but enjoy them. But one of the Easter eggs for her that is being cosplayed is a really awesome, cool leather jacket that in the evening, in my mind, Duella doesn't really sleep, and she's not good with idle hands, so she's just making her own clothes and funking them up and making them really cool and different and Duellified. And so this jacket has the Gotham City skyline embroidered on it on this skull leather. And then she's put studs and rivets and painted it and like done all this kind of funky, fun stuff to it. And then spray painted and graffiti the ace for Ace of Clubs symbol. And it's just one of those fun little moments where instead of the bat symbol, it's her symbol. So that's one of the fun Easter eggs. And then at the beginning of the season, I was fabric shopping and actually came across the exact same fabric that was used in Heath Ledger's Joker costume from Dark Knight. I kind of like yelped out loud when I found it because I was like, and my mom was actually with me and she thought I saw a rodent or something and was like, "Are you okay?" And it was out of the corner of my eye and I was like, that's his shirt fabric. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And it was, and I texted James and Chad immediately and was like, "I don't know where we're going to use this for Duella, but since she's supposedly the Joker's daughter, she needs to wear it somewhere." And episode 109 came out, the script, and it had in there that Duella was wearing a grenade-lined coat, much like Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. And I was like, well, that coat has to be lined in this fabric. Like, we are paying homage to Heath, we are paying homage to The Dark Knight, which was released 15 years ago this week. And we're still keeping it real to our show. And that is one of my favorite Easter eggs whatsoever. And then on a personal level, I am now canon in the DCU thanks to the showrunners. So May Nickel is a haute couture fashion designer for Gotham. So, woo.
That's incredible. And it's awesome that it's such a cool way to like honor somebody in that way. Is there any of you others have maybe something similar?
I do, yeah. So I can speak to both the fan side and the personal side of Easter eggs. I'm a Virgo, as I say, created by Boots Riley. His first project, Sorry to Bother You, if anyone's seen it, towards the end of the film, it kind of gets a little weird, and there's some characters, or creatures, maybe we call them, at the end of Sorry to Bother You that might appear in I'm a Virgo. And we did check with Boots, in case making these two worlds canon was not a great idea, but he was fine with it. In fact, he was quite touched that we took the time to do that. And then, yeah, on a personal level, during the production of I'm a Virgo, one of my artists passed away, and Amazon were gracious enough to let us put something in the show for him. So I won't go into any details, but that was really nice of them, and I know the family really appreciated it. So.
Oh, that's really nice.
That's very nice, and thank you for sharing that with us. That's very nice.
I have one more, but it's really silly following that.
Please do.
Yeah, we put a whale sound in every episode of the Epic Tales of Captain Underpants. It kind of sounds like Chewbacca. It's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm sure someone could do it.
You kind of have to now, but we won't hold you.
No, I'm sorry, guys. I'm not a voice actor. I just do the mix. But anyway, some are overt and some are kind of like secret. But when our editor put it in the first episode, the producers of the show, Peter Hastings and Todd Grimes, were like so into how weird it was that they said we got to put it in every episode. So it's there.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Really fun.
Weirdly, we have whale sounds in Twisted Metal too.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know whether from the trailer you'd see this like 18-wheeler that may or may not be Juggernaut. Can't say because it's not out yet. But yeah, Juggernaut travels, and when it arrives, especially when it's in motion, in full motion, it's got this like groaning sound, and we took whale sounds and like detune them, pitch them down, and marry that with the engine. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, weird coincidence.
Yeah, there's so many Easter eggs out there that people don't know about and still don't know about. I mean, I might or might not have done when I was an artist. Painted my initials on the bottom of a certain Falcon, but it feels like a millennium ago. So I'll leave it at that. You can see if you can find it.
Yeah, and the amount of like motion graphics and UI design that we do, our names, our birthdays, everything's in there. We can always point to that. So yeah.
What about you? Anything that you obviously spoke about like inspiration from,
Yeah,
other people.
Yeah, in Gremlins, there's actually a lot of the writers put all these really fantastic, throwbacks to a lot of the Amblin movies. So, and certainly in this season we have like the famous kitchen scene, kind of. So I gotta say though, musically though, I think. I don't know if there's Easter eggs really, but I mean, I just the idea of weaving Jerry Goldsmith's themes, every now and then, just in there, maybe when you, maybe into a sense where you feel it instead of really hear it. But in terms of the writing and what fans can totally see in this season and certainly upcoming in the next season is a lot of those callbacks to, what Steven was doing, Steven Spielberg, just, all these Amblin things, and just, everything from your childhood is all going to be in there, references, and they're done really well. They're done with a new spin on them. They're kind of overt, but they're kind of, they're tucked in there really nicely. So I think fans will be excited.
Nice. So we'll start with you, Marshall. In one sentence or less, what key lesson have you learned throughout your career that you would like to pass on to those who are starting their journey in entertainment?
Well, I would have to say, to quote a movie that I worked on, never give up, never surrender. And the reason is just, like I said, keep if you want to do it and you want to get into the field and the industry, like I mentioned before, just keep driving and keep your focus.
That's a good one. Honestly, do the work and don't be a jerk. I
like that.
But especially like an episode, no one wants to be stuck in the trenches with a jerk. We're making art here. We're making really cool stories, and show up and do the work. And to tack on what you're saying, I think you have to really want it. If you really want to do this, you really want it. That journey is gonna be like your reward.
Mine may pertain more to post-production, but someone once said to me that your shot or your work is never finished. They just take it away from you. When you're on set, you're on timelines and things, and we had more of that in post-production when things were released weekly. There's that very defined date that it needs to be released, needs to be finished. With streaming, that's got a little bit vague, and you can keep pushing things, you can keep improving things, you can always do something else. A shot's never finished. They just take it away from you.
I would say, especially during this time, patience and perseverance, because this is the second strike I have lived through, and it is a necessary one. The studios are not negotiating in good faith. Every single one of us in this industry, every single one of us up at this table, anyone, we deserve our pay, we deserve our health care, we deserve everything that the unions are asking for. So if you're getting into the industry now, I know it might seem like a scary time to do so because there's not a lot of work out there, but be patient. If you love this the way we all up here love it, you will persevere, you will get through it, and your career will only be that much better for it because we're fighting for the people who are starting their careers right now.
Yeah, amen to that.
Follow that, James.
Yeah, I know. No pressure. I'd say, especially when you're starting out, just starting out, you never know who you're going to run into, and I think it's important to just say yes to every opportunity that comes along. Especially if it's something that you're really interested in doing. I was fortunate when I was coming up to just by happenstance meet a really good group of sound designers and sound editors that I've been blessed to work with for my whole career, and it was saying yes to projects that they said, hey, we're doing this thing on the side, do you want to help us out with it? And, it was in the early days, so, we didn't really have much, credits on our IMDb or whatever, so we just all kind of hustled together, and I think it's really important to just take every opportunity and pour your heart into it and make sure that what you're delivering is the best you can possibly do. So, yeah.
I would just say that you never stop learning in this business, in life in general, but just be humble and never stop asking questions, and you'll go really far.
So as we're wrapping this up, tell us what you're working on next and where we can see your next piece of work.
Not sure I can totally talk about it, but you can always go to IMDb. And
Circle of Trust.
Yeah. Worked on a Netflix show, but also working on another, I guess, well, I don't want to talk about that one, right?
But
Yeah.
it's really great stuff. You're
Yeah, really good stuff. Right now, I'm just craving barbecue for some reason. Okay, sorry.
I actually have a little rom-com coming out on Netflix called Happiness for Beginners. It's based on a book by Catherine Center that has the same name. And so I think sometime in the fall on NBC, I have a show called Found. But yeah.
Awesome.
I actually have 2 projects that are finished and have been for a little bit. They're just sort of awaiting a release.
They were taken away from you.
They were taken away. Yeah, I didn't finish it. They just took it away. So Snowpiercer Season 4, that's coming out.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
Well, it should be. Fingers crossed, like I say. It hasn't got a release date yet. So Snowpiercer Season 4 is one, and Orphan Black Echoes, a reboot of Orphan Black. Well, side, not a reboot. I don't want to, yeah.
I'm designing season 2 of Gotham Knights in my head, just for myself. No, but I'm working on putting a few ideas together for a show once the strike ends, if I can sell it.
Yeah, I'm working on 2 feature films, weirdly, both for Lionsgate. One of them is kind of like a dark comedy called The Duel, and it just finished, and it's getting distribution soon. It's got Dylan Sprouse in it, and the other one is a horror movie called Creepers, which we're working on right now, which should come out later this year. So,
It's an exciting time for me. I work in a lot of children's animation, as you've seen on screen, but my company, Boombox Post, is working on a lot more adult animation right now. So I'm really excited to be working on the new Exploding Kittens series for Netflix. Working with Brian Sheasley on that and the team at Netflix. And we're right in the middle now of post on season 2 of Invincible for Amazon. Any Invincible fans? So that show is completely bananas and fun to work on, and I'm just so excited to share with everybody.
Awesome. Lots of great stuff. Let's how about a round of applause, guys, for amazing panel. All right, thank you guys so much. That's all the time we have. Let's thank our panelists, Marshall, Sherri, Jamie, Jennifer, James, and Jeff, which you guys, of course, one more time. Yeah. Thank you guys for being with us here today.